In this lesson series, we'll examine three great narratives that humans have used to understand our world. By narrative, we mean sort of a story that is told to help us understand our origins and the origin of the entire world, as well as the significance of our existence. The three narratives are associated with three metaphors. We'll look at the Christian worldview, and the metaphor associated with that is the world is an artifact. An Eastern religious point of view, the metaphor is the world is a drama. And the scientific worldview, the world is an automatic machine. So in this lesson, we'll take a look at the Christian worldview, or the Christian narrative. The metaphor associated with the Christian worldview is the world is an artifact. And by artifact, we mean an object that was purposely designed and then created to serve that purpose. So when naturalists in the 1800s were trying to understand species, the most common view was the Christian worldview that God had created all of these different kinds of species at some point in the past, and they have not changed since that creation event. Well, the creation of a species takes intelligence, so the Christian saw God as an intelligent mind, designed each type of species with certain kinds of characteristics, and then created them in the act of creation as described in the Bible. Here's a famous painting by Michelangelo of God creating Adam. Notice Adam was made in the image of God. Let's take a look at another species we find in nature, the praying mantis. In these pictures, the praying mantis has captured a bee. They are carnivores. Its four-limbed spikes help keep the prey secure. They have a purpose. Look at these spikes, pretty intimidating. And the idea is these are parts with purpose. They serve a function to keep the prey immobilized so the prey can't escape while the mantis feeds. Biologists call such features adaptations. Adaptations are heritable traits that help an individual survive and reproduce. They look like they were designed to serve a purpose. Now for the Christian, when the Christian looked out in nature and saw parts with purpose, they immediately attributed that to God's intelligence. The reason this part has a purpose is because God designed it to have that purpose. So when God made mantises, God included this design feature in the mantises to help the mantis keep hold of its prey. Now, how does that process work? Well, here's the Christian sort of explanation for the spikes on the mantis's forelimbs. Step one, God thinks of the purpose of the part and then designs its structure to serve that purpose. So notice that the design comes first, right? So God's thinking of making mantises, and God wants the mantis to have something a little extra to help keep the prey secure, and these spikes would do the job, would serve the purpose. That's the design phase. And step two, God makes mantises with those parts that were designed to serve that function. So what we have then is the purpose, in a sense, of the part comes first, because God is designing, right? The design stage happens first, and then you actually make it. It's just like in the fashion industry, right? You design, you draw out the dress, and then you actually cut the material and make the dress. So too for the Christian understanding of all these parts with purposes, adaptations found in nature. So just as this sculptor has an idea in mind prior to making the first strike, so too God designed species adaptations and then constructed species with those features. Thus the purpose of an animal organ or appendage came first, followed by the construction of the part second. So we're going to understand the Christian worldview with respect to species by using another metaphor. Species are stone sculptures made by God and unchanging. So the idea is a stone sculpture is more resistant to weathering and such, so it kind of stays the way it is since it was made. And if we now sort of add God into the picture, then we want to think about God creating species, sculpting them in a sense, using the design plan in God's mind, and then constructing species according to that design plan. Now this is a picture actually of Prometheus, a Greek god, creating human here, and the actual material is clay, but we're going to pretend this is stone here. So the Christian idea then is God is creating species, sort of making them out of stone. They're unchanging. The stone sculpture analogy captures the fixed nature of species in the Christian worldview. The stone species are resistant to change by forces inside of nature. According to Christian thinkers, animals could not change themselves, nor could they change each other. God made them in a certain way, and they stayed that way since their creation. Now, another feature of this worldview is that, in a sense, living things were put into this universe by God. And we're going to see how that contrasts with the scientific worldview later, where we'll sort of say that living things grow out of the universe, grow out of the earth. In the Christian worldview, living things are sort of put into this universe by God. There are some implications to this worldview. Number one, the appearance of design in nature is evidence of God's intelligence. Living things appear to be designed because they were designed. Secondly, the Christian narrative gives meaning and purpose to human life, to worship the Creator. And thirdly, the Christian worldview has certain ideas about death. Death is not the end. There is everlasting life for the faithful. And the human suffering that we experience is rooted in human sin, the disobedience in the Garden of Eden, for example. It is not an inherently natural phenomenon. And finally, we are not just another kind of animal. We are intelligent and moral because we were made in God's image. So this is the first of the three narratives we'll look at, the Christian narrative, captured by the metaphor, the world is an artifact.